And this is the hard part about it, because sometimes we feel that we're doing all that we can. And we may be doing all that we can, but if all that we can isn't working, then we've got to change what we're doing. If it's not working, why waste the time doing it? And as I said last night, growth is not always revival. We can grow, but we don't always change. So today I'm going to focus on why some churches grow and other churches struggle just to keep up. And I don't know where your church is today, and I'm not making any accusations, and I don't have all the answers. I just want to share with you some principles. You see, growth starts with vision. If you have a company, if you have a family, it doesn't matter if it's a church, if it's a family, it's a company, your business. If you're going to grow your family, you got to have a vision. We want 3 kids, 4 kids, 5 kids, 1 kid, no kids. You got to have a vision. And as you grow in your vision, your plan has to change. What you state today and what works today may not get you to tomorrow. So what works at 15 people may not work at 25. It may not. Listen, potlucks work great until you get about 300 people and 400 people. And we try to have a potluck with 500 people, and we have 100 crock pots, and you're trying to figure out how to keep 100 crock pots hot while you're having service. People say, I miss the potlucks. Have a home fellowship and have your potluck. We can't have a potluck for 1,500 people. It won't work anymore. We went around and had to determine what sacred cows we were going to keep and feed as beef at a Sunday school picnic and what ones we were going to keep. Sacred cows are very tender because they don't work much. And they taste really good when they're barbecued right. I just want to let you know that. All right, so growth starts with vision. You're never going to grow without a vision. And if your vision is easy to obtain, it's not a vision, it's just a goal. And sometimes our vision is nothing more than a simple goal. If your vision doesn't scare you, if your vision is impossible for you to do, then that is when God steps in, because we need God-sized visions, not simple goals that we need to obtain by a month-to-month basis. I looked at our church at Calvary, and we have gone through, it seems like for the last 5 years, we've been a constant state of transition. Brother Dobbs, you said it so very well this morning. I'm sick of transition. I'm going to tell you that. I'm tired of switching and changing and reorganizing. I'm tired of it. I'm ready to move forward. I feel like Joshua standing at the banks of the Jordan River and saying, let me at Jericho. It's my promise. I'm going to get it one way or another. I'm tired of wandering around in circles. Let's get this thing and get it over with. That's how I feel. But you see, how do we go from vision to reality? There's something missing there. And we had the same thing in Madison. We had this vision for our community, and the vision. I'm going to tell you, the vision is the easiest part of it. It really is. Can I take my coat off? Is that all right if I do that? I am hot, probably because I'm nervous because I got all of these guys down here from the board just staring at me up here. I feel like I'm in the principal's office, and there's like 15 principals. So, we have this vision, and vision is easy. I can sit right down and I can write a vision for this church, Brother Bennett. We're going to have a vision that we're going to reach 10,000 souls in this county. We're going to have church plants all over. We're going to have Sunday schools mobile. We're going to have food kitchens. We're going to have our own homeless shelter. You can come up with wild visions, but the problem is how are you going to get there? That's where mission comes in. We had a great vision. Our bishop laid this out for us. We had a vision. We had this 10,000 souls or 20,000 souls, and we were going to take, and we were excited about this. And the church bought into this, and we began to grow and push towards that. But we struggled and struggled and struggled. And the problem is people are dying faster than we can win them. We're losing this battle. I don't know if you know that or not. We're losing it. But you see, we think that because it's a God-given vision, that God is going to provide everything. We understand that Israel had to leave Egypt. They didn't just walk out of the borders of Egypt and instantly, like Philip, they were in the promised land. They had to walk. They had to gather food. They had to set their tents up. They had to take their tents down. They had all of these things that it took to move 2.5, 3 million people from one country to another. They stood at the border of their vision. They stood at the border of the promised land. They looked across. On the other side of the river was their promise. That's what God had given to Abraham 600 years earlier. They were at the banks of their vision, but still they had to cross over. We go into a city, we plant a church, we have a few Bible studies, we win a few souls, and the church starts to grow. And I'm going to use an analogy this morning that all of the attention becomes about our little fish bowl. You ever have one of those little fish bowls as a kid and you had one goldfish in it and it sat on the countertop? Anybody ever have that? Come on, more of you had fish at home, fish bowls. It'd die and you'd flush it down the toilet and you'd come home and you'd get another one, put it in there. Fish would live for a while and it'd die and you flush it and you get another one. They're only 29 cents. But you see, we have this little fish bowl. And sometimes as a church, we win a few souls and the church starts to grow and all the attention is on that little fish bowl that we have. I wish I had a fish bowl up here. I could just illustrate this. So we have our little fish bowl, and it's a pretty little bowl. It's got a little bit of gravel in it. It's got that little sunken pirate ship down at the bottom. And we got that little bubbly thing that goes in it, and little bubbles come out of the hole in the side of the ship. We got a few little plants in there. Got to have a few little plants. They're plastic plants, you know. Put them in there, and you got to have that little air tube that goes down in there, that little stone on there. And we got a beautiful fish bowl. We go and we get a few little guppies. How many of you ever had little guppies? Those little headlight, taillight, those little neons. We put a little fish in there. We got a little angel fish. Every fish bowl got to have an angel fish. And then we got to have one of those fish that's on the bottom that just eats all the gunk on the bottom. Okay, those bottom dwellers. You know what I'm talking about. Every church has those. This right here is just a microcosm of what our churches are like. We got all the people, the headlight, taillights. They're always the first ones. They're leading the way for everybody else. Then we got the neons. They're the ones that like to show off. They don't really do much. They just show off all their pretty color. And then we got the angelfish that are forever got broken fins. And then we got the bottom dwellers that do nothing but sit down there and just suck up all of the goop from everybody else. Every tank, the bottom dweller is always the most active because that's the one that's going around everybody and it's going through the crowds and it's finding out all of the junk and all of the... You know what I'm talking about. And you know what happens after a while? Church, we spend all of our time, all of our energies, and all of our efforts go into maintaining that little fish bowl. And we're sitting on the edge of a massive pond that's totally an untapped resource. Does it matter if your church is at 100, at 200, at 500, at 1,000, or whatever it is, it could be at 15. The same exact concept works throughout the whole organization. You see, as pastor, this represents our congregation, small, diverse. Every fish has a quirk. We know that. Some of you saints are here. You're thinking of somebody else. You're thinking, it's not me. He's not talking about me right now. God forbid. I've got services. My pride's gone from last night. I've got my hurt taken care of this morning. He ain't talking about me. You see in here, all of the focus, hear me now, all of the focus becomes internal. It's all about those fish. And we started off talking about a mindset for revival. You had a plan, and you're working that plan, but your church goes into what we call this maintenance mode. And I hate maintenance mode. Years ago, we were having a lot of growth, and we had an evangelist come through, and in his own, he just made the statement that, you know what, sometimes churches need to go into maintenance mode. And I'm like, maintenance mode? We have a van fleet. We don't all put them in at maintenance at the same time. We put them in one at a time, and then we pull them back in, we pull them back out. I mean, you can't fight a war. That's why McClellan in the Civil War got yanked by Lincoln, because he wanted to constantly, he'd go to battle for a few hours, and he spent 14 days in maintenance mode. I love history, okay? You can't win that way. So when all your focus is on maintaining what you have, you've got no more time to reach out and get any more fish in the fishbowl. The only time that we get fish in the fishbowl is when 1 or 2 or 3 fish die. We flush them, and we feel bad about it, so we got to go get some more buddies. So we go out and we have a park picnic, and maybe we get 2 or 3 more people. We bring them back in, introduce them back into the fishbowl. One of them's a Siamese fighting fish that doesn't get along with anybody. And you're thinking, Lord, how does this happen? Got all puffed up all the time. He looks beautiful. Man, do they look beautiful. But boy, are they ornery. After a few years, you have another growth spurt. You think, man, we got a few more fish. You add a few more fish, and it repeats itself. Maybe you go from just that little fish bowl, that little countertop fish bowl, a little home Bible study, and you get yourself a new building, and you grow into that. And now all of a sudden, you got a storefront type building in a little mini mall, and you got exposure. You take that fish tank off the aquarium, and now it's the fish tank off the counter, and now it's the centerpiece in your living room. You add more to it, and it begins to grow and begins to grow. And as a pastor, as the keeper of the fishbowl, all your time is consumed with dealing with issues, with the neons, with the gouramis. Gourami's called a kissing fish. Every church has those type of people that always want to, you know what I'm talking about. I don't have to say that. Such as some of us were, maybe, perhaps, I don't know. But you spend all your time, all your energy goes in. So how do you get past that mode? How do you break out of that? You see, this is where discipleship comes in. Jesus understood that if he had 12 disciples, this is just, to me, this was just profound. If he had 12 disciples, and he spent all of his time on those 12 disciples, discipling them, that if he took those 12 and released them, he empowered them, he allowed them to leave the bowl and place them in the pond, that they would be much more effective reproducing in a pond than they would in the bowl. You know, I've had goldfish for years and years and years, and never, ever once have they ever reproduced in a fish bowl. I put a pond in a few years back. I put a handful of fish in there, and when we went into this fall, I was doing my annual cleaning. I got more fish in that pond. Some of them little bitty ones, some of all different sizes and shapes, up to 10, 12, 14. You know what those fish are doing? I release them from the bowl, I set them into the pond, and they're reproducing. But sometimes as pastors, and all you saints, you can just plug your ears right now if you want to. That's fine, however you want to do this. But all the pastors out here, listen, the key to growth is not maintaining what you have indefinitely, but it's taking what you have, discipling, giving them an opportunity to learn, give them an opportunity to fail. We have a problem with that sometimes. We have a problem as pastors. Well, I can't trust him. He's only 35 years old. We were talking about that at our church a few months ago because some of the younger men are our congregation in leadership, and some of the elders were saying, he's only 30. He's only in his 30s. I said, he's 38 years old. I reminded Bishop, you were 32 when you came to take this church here. You were 40 when you became district superintendent. These guys are 38. And we can't trust them yet? That tells me there's something wrong with me. That tells me that maybe I have insecurities as a pastor. God forbid that any one of these young men should outdo me. Hey, we can think that way. We may not voice it that way, but that's what we're thinking. I got to be the smartest one here. Listen, I'm not the smartest one on our staff. I'll tell you that. We got some staff that's incredible. It's just God chose me to be the leader. That's all. I do what I do best. I challenge people. I lead people. We got a job to do. Let's get it done. That's what I can do. That's what I bring to the table. So you have a growth spurt. You go from 15 to 20, 25 to 30, good growth, happy. You got some more people. Your wife's playing the piano, and you begin to develop a worship leader, and you've got some kids in the church, so you got a Sunday school that you start, and you need someone to work with the youth, and the elderly is looking for somebody to visit the nursing home, and you reach this plateau. And you stay there for a while, and you lose a few, you gain a few, and years go by. Sometimes 10 years will go by, and you finally hit that 50 to 75 mark, and you settle in because you know statistically that 75 or of all the churches in America, the average attendance of the average church in North America is 75. So you're like, wow, we finally are, we're average. We're just like everybody else. We're no better, we're no worse. But God's not looking for average churches. God's not looking for status quo here. You realize it takes a lot of churches. We look at big churches like Joel Osteen there. I've been to his church. I visited, got a behind the scenes. I don't agree with what he's doing. I don't agree with his doctrine. But you know what? It takes a lot to get that many people in one place on a Sunday. And not them have to pay to watch somebody play on the field. They're coming there because they want to be there. And the concept, we may disagree with the process, but they're doing something. And it takes an awful lot of those big churches to pull that average down to 75. Think about that. So because 75 is the average why is that? Because that is the maximum amount of people that any one single pastor can really effectively pastor. So you've reached, as a pastor, you've reached your maximum capacity. You can't physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally deal with any more people. You got all your fishbowl all intact and everything's flowing great and you're doing good, and you settle into this mode of mediocrity that we're maintaining. We'll win a few, lose a few, and we'll go on this way. And let me show you just through a simple illustration as to how you break out of this mold. Okay, so I'm going to take you four gentlemen here. Go ahead, or three. We had four. Brother Baez, you were over here before. Come on up here. I'm going to use all four of you here. Okay. Now you're going to have to turn and face the audience. Okay? Don't these guys look awesome? Your church grows, okay? And your pastor's wife says, you know what? Hon, we got a lot of ladies in the church now, a lot of single ladies, so we need to have a ladies ministry. And so you take and you get your ladies, then you look like a... So you get your ladies ministry, okay? Now what we're going to do is this is going to be a big, huge teeter-totter. Can you just imagine this as a big teeter-totter? What you sit on, that big board goes straight across here. And right here in the middle, could you come right here, brother? Could you just sit right here? Just sit. You're the fulcrum of all of this. Okay? So that's where the teeter-totter. So before, in order to get to this point, you had to have some form of outreach. You were teaching Bible studies and all this kind of stuff was going on. All right? So you start a ladies' ministry. And then you're like, you know what, we got a lot of kids around here too, so we need a Sunday school. So you go over here and you can start a Sunday school. Okay, so you start a Sunday school ministry. And maybe you stay at that level for a little while. You're still doing some outreach. Okay? But what happens in our teeter-totter, if you've got on this side, if you've got all your in-reach ministries, and then you've got your outreach ministries, can you see what's happening here? After a while, everything on this teeter-totter, as you begin to start your youth ministry, everything starts to become one-sided here. All right? And then maybe you got evangelism over here, and evangelism's over here all by itself. And you got all of this weight that's over here with all of these other ministries. And there's no way in the world that evangelism can outweigh all of this. Okay, it's not going to happen. If we were to have a big teeter-totter up here, you'd be right up in the air right now, and they'd be trying to bounce and launch you, okay? So this is what happens with churches, is we get to a specific size, and everything all becomes about what's happening internally in the church. This is what we term at Calvary. We call this as our in-reach. These is our in-reach. And everything becomes internal. Okay, now there's nothing wrong with discipleship. There's nothing wrong with youth ministries. And there's nothing wrong with Sunday schools. Okay? But after a while, outreach begins to lose its effect because outreach can't keep up. And everybody wants to be in Sunday school, and everybody wants to be in youth ministry, and everybody wants to be in such. So after a time, we actually even take and say, you know what? We've grown as far as we can grow. We don't have any more growth, so let's take outreach and let's outreach becomes more of an in-reach, becomes more of an inward ministry. And then we sit here and everything is on this side of the equation. Now we look at this and we say, you know, this is really simple, but you can look in your own congregations, your own churches, and you can balance this out in your minds. How many in-reaches? Like we have like 42 ministries in our church. Is that like ridiculous? I'm serious. We've talked about this. Every new group of people that come in got its own set of problems. It's like, well, we got to have this now. We got to have this, and what are we going to do about this? And good Lord, we need this over here, Pastor. And after a while, you're just like, what in the world? You begin to lose your focus. We're no longer just making crayons. We're trying to build a car, and we're trying to make batteries and all of this. Just stick with crayons if that's what you do best. So what we've decided is we came up with this, our bishop did, and we call it the reach up in worship, reach in discipleship, and reach out in outreach. So what we said is, you know what, we got a bus ministry that's fledging. Nobody wants to be on the bus routes. Takes too much time, Brother Owens. So we said, okay, Sunday school, your outreach, every ministry is going to have outreach. So your outreach for Sunday school is going to become the bus ministry. And we expect results. There's expectations. You see, as leaders, as a pastor, one thing I found out, if I don't expect things from people, I'm not going to get things from people. People expect things from me as a pastor, then I should be able to expect things from you as a saint, right? So we have our ladies ministry, and you know what our ladies ministry does? They help provide things for our outreaches. Where's our ladies ministry? That was our ladies. I'm sorry, I'm all backwards. This is our ladies ministry. Sunday school is down on the end down there. So our ladies ministry, we have our outreaches, and the ladies, they get everything put together for those. Then we have our men's ministry, and our men's ministry, you know what they do? They go out on outreach, and they run the barbecue grills. They love to do that. And then we have our music ministry. Our music ministry, they do all the music at our outreaches. So after a while, all of your ministries that are typically normally in-reach ministries all begin to take on an outreach mindset. And then you start to balance this back out. You start to put things back over, and things begin to get back more into a balance. And every ministry now that we add to Calvary Gospel Church, when we add it, it's like, okay, this is an in-reach issue. This is an in-reach ministry. What's going to be your form of outreach in this ministry? What are you going to do? If you're running a singles ladies, abused ladies, what are you going to do as outreach? You got a handful of abused ladies that are in the church for whatever reasons, their issues and such. Okay, then your ministry is going to be, you need to go out and you need to go to the abuse shelters. And you need to get an open door and get in those shelters. You need to start ministering to those ladies that are in. Because what happens, you can be excused. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for being a good fulcrum there, bro. See, what happens over a period of time is if everything becomes internal and there's no outreach, we settle into this comfortable pattern, and that's where we stay. And this is where a mindset change has to come in, and it has to start with the pastor. For those of you pastors here, this is a point where most churches make a critical error. Now, I'm not an expert at this, but I've seen it so many times that a pastor decides that he needs an assistant, someone that can help. So he takes a young man from the congregation, and instead of treating him as a young Timothy and mentoring him in the gospel, we give him tasks to do. So we have all of this potential: mowing the lawn, keeping the bathrooms clean, running your car down to get it washed and oil changed. We have all this potential there, and we're not utilizing it to the best of their abilities. Listen, there's some talented young people in our congregations. There's some talented young people here that you may feel like, am I ever going to get an opportunity? I sure hope so. I sure hope that we can get a grasp on this, because the only way that we're going to take that vision and become reality and have 200, 300, 400 churches in this district is when we start to empower young people. There's only so many old people to go around. Our bishop, I love my father. He's our bishop. A tremendous man of God, great teacher, great mentor. But you know what? He can't do things like he used to do anymore. And things we have to raise up. We talk about this all the time with Israel in the wilderness. A whole nother generation rose up. A whole new generation rose up of leaders, of men of war. And I'm amazed that when Joshua took over from Moses, Brother Pace, and they crossed over Jordan. Can you tell me, this is a trick question here, okay? I'm just going to get, so don't sweat this, okay? Can you tell me how many leaders in the first book of Joshua, in Joshua chapter 1, how many leaders did Joshua have to replace when they went over and crossed Jordan? He didn't. You know why he didn't have to replace any leaders? You know why he didn't have to take time to transition? Because he had been working behind the scenes with Moses for 40 years, developing the leaders that were going to go in and take the land. He was developing the leaders that would go from the vision that they would take and train them for mission, so that mission, that vision with mission, can become reality. He didn't have to change anybody. He didn't have to trade things. He didn't have to make any adjustments, because they were already ready to go. You see, that's why some of our churches are struggling so much with transition right now. It's because we as senior pastors have not taken the time to raise up someone because we don't trust anyone to do it just exactly how we do. And God's not looking. Listen, I struggle with this, Bishop. I struggle with this. And I've said this in our church. God, I can't fill John Grant's shoes. How in the world am I going to do that? And I had this attitude that I'm never going to be able to take and measure up. I can't do it. People are going to expect me to do that. Listen, those young men in your church, don't make them measure up to what you are. Because God is not calling them to be another you. He wants them to be them. I love my father, but there's some things that I can do that he can't do. Can you believe that? I can still run the 50-yard dash. He has to get in his Tahoe and drive it. He's probably watching this right now thinking, come on, son. You see, we have to raise up. We have to train up. We have to teach. And as ministries grow harder and harder and harder, sometimes it's difficult to keep unity in the church. But you see, what happens to a lot of churches, and I know 1 o'clock is my time frame here. As we grow, instead of growing in unity, we begin to grow in separation. Let me tell you how this happens, okay? And this is going to just get down kind of nitty-gritty here. Is what happens is as we begin to grow our churches, and we have Sunday school, we have youth, we have ladies, we have men, we have outreach, we put them in a department. And the department is very similar to a compartment. They even sound the same. Okay? So we put them in this department, and that department is departmentalized, and it's like a silo. It's like a shipping container. And we tell them, this is your ministry, this is your area of responsibility, stay in it. Because we don't want you messing Sunday school. You can't mess with youth's turf. Youth, you got to stay out of hyphen's way. Hyphen, you got to figure out how to work with ladies, and ladies, men's ministries. We put them in silos. And as we begin to grow, you see, Saturn Car Company figured this out years ago. And instead of working on an assembly line, and you do the same thing over and over and over again all day long, they said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take a team concept, and we're going to take this there's a reason in the scripture why it says that the children of the world are wiser than the children of light. We're still running it assembly line conceptual, and Saturn comes along and says, we're going to take a team and build that car. And what happened when they took a team to build a car? They started to find out that, you know what? As the team builds a car, they talk to engineering and says, if you would reverse the pattern of these bolts, or if you would move this bolt hole from here to here, or if you would change the direction of this or that, we can do this much more effectively, much more efficiently, and we can save costs to the company. So they instituted bonuses for those various teams and how well they performed and produced. And they went out of business eventually because Chevy closed them. Okay? They closed Pontiac and everything. That was a corporate decision. But nevertheless, the concept was tremendous. And we need to bring that concept. What we do at Calvary is we've taken and gotten rid of the silos. And one of the better things I've come up with, ingenious-wise, was, the Olympic rings? Every one of our ministries is like a ring. And those rings are all intertwined, aren't they? Every last one of them. There's 4 and then 3, I believe. But in between that ring, there's this little area there that looks like a little football where the 2 circles overlap. And that's the communication that goes from Sunday school to youth ministry, to hyphen ministry, to ladies ministry, to men's ministry, outreach ministries, inreach, discipleship, all of this, so that all of these ministries, as we spread them all out, every last one of them is internally linked to the other ministry. Now, can you just imagine this concept if we could take this idea and put this into practice with all of our churches? Now, this is like really out there, but what would it be like if we had this brother right here? He's pastoring. I'm going to use you guys again. He's pastoring here in Eau Claire, and then a little further away, you got another small community, and he's pastoring, and he interlinks his arm right there. And then you got another brother here, and they interlink their arm. They communicate with one another. They work with one another and dwell together in unity. Can you imagine what we could do for the kingdom of God if we stopped worrying about our little compartment? Amen. If we stop worrying about, you know what, I look at this right here, and if I'm right here in the middle, and I look at this as my brothers, I got this brother right here. I'm going to move you. He's right over here. He's got my right flank. He's got me covered on the right. This brother over here, he's over here on my left. He's got my left flank covered. And who back here? Is this brother here? He's got my back. These guys aren't my enemies. I can't survive without them. I need them. But we have this idea, thank you. We have this idea that God called me to this city and nobody else. This is mine. I'm sorry for meddling here, Bishop. I hope I don't get myself in trouble here. But you see, this isn't my church. This isn't your church. This is God's church. And if we're going to take and reach our communities, we're not doing it. We're not getting it done. That's why in Madison, it's like, you know what? I need 30 couples, licensed ministers to complete the groundwork for the vision of 20,000 souls. There's not a facility in Dane County that will house 20,000 souls. It won't work. Can't do it unless we met at Camp Randall, and then we wouldn't be able to have service on a day like today. So what do we got to do? We got to reach out. We got to change. We got to get outside of our four walls. We've got to get the church. That's what I like about the book of Acts. They went from the Holy Ghost was poured out in the upper room. And what is the first thing they did is God says, you're going to move this from here in this confined area, and you get out on the street with it. You get out to where the people are. We have neighborhood churches. Brother Owens, we got neighborhoods in Madison that are larger than a lot of small towns. And we can't afford to bring all of those people to Calvary, and we don't have the space for them. So you know what we determined? We said, you know what? We're going to go and we're going to plant a church in that neighborhood. James Hawk pastors a neighborhood church. That church may never be more than 300, 400, 500. It could be 1,000 if God wills it to be. It's a neighborhood church. People walk to church. We don't have to have buses. We don't have to have vans. It's right in their neighborhood. And it's right in the Boys and Girls Club in the neighborhood center. They all walk to it. It's all within walking distance. It doesn't look very good Sunday morning as I stand up to preach and all of those people aren't there. But you know what? I trust James Hawk. We've empowered James Hawk. James Hawk's a local licensed minister. The district board trusts him. He's going to build a work there. And you know what? He's got a young man that's mentoring under him. And when that young man reaches the level to where he's ready to take and start, then we're going to branch him out. Every one of our preaching points has 2 pastoral couples there. I don't know how else to do this. You see, I look at the apostles, and I want to close with this thought. I look at the apostles. You had Peter, James, and John. That's the ones we always hear about. Peter, James, and John. What did Bartholomew do? You got any idea? What did he do? Brother Dobbs might know. You might know more about this than I do. But what did Luke? You think about this. Andrew? You know what? This is my theology on this. Don't go home and preach it as doctrine. It's just my observation. God has spearheads in his church. Evangelists, revivalists, they're spearheads. Peter, James, and John, I don't read about Andrew getting stoned anywhere. I don't read about Bartholomew. I know they were all killed, all martyred for the name of Christ. But we don't read about them going in and starting a revival. It was always those three, Peter, James, and John, in the early days. They were out there making things happen. Figure out in your church who's your spearheads. And get them out into your community and let them make things happen. Let the Peters get out on the street and preach because that's their calling. Let the Johns get out there. Let the Jameses get out there. I have this concept that when they went into a community, Peter, James, and John were the first ones there on the street. They went in and they preached and preached and preached and got beat up, stoned, and thrown in prison. But they started something. They stirred up the population. They got people coming out. And what did the rest of them do? They were the organizers. Every church needs organizers. And as they begin to grow that church, and that church began to grow, and they begin to reap a harvest from their preaching, the rest of them come in behind them with their team. And they said, okay, we're going to take care of this. We got all of these elders back here. Stephen started out waiting tables. He ended up getting stoned for preaching. Philip started out waiting tables in Acts 4, and he ended up an evangelist, getting carried away from Samaria into the wilderness or the desert for the eunuch. They didn't stay table waiters. And sometimes we take these good quality men and we give them a task to do, and we never allow them. I'm not the ladies too, okay? We take good quality people and we never allow God to be God in their lives. We have to be able to take. If we're going to take and we're going to grow our churches, the key to this is empowerment of people. We have to do it. It's the only way we're going to do it. We're not going to do it. We're not going to make it any other way. So with that, my time is up, and let's just stand. Let's just stand this morning. You see, I can promise you, as you begin to take and accomplish, see, we're never going to accomplish this unless we have a mindset change. We're never going to reach this state unless we have a mindset change. We're never going to reach our world unless we have a mindset change. We need more manpower. We need more young people. We need more people of all ages. All races, people who are willing to sacrifice for the kingdom. We have to train, empower, and we have to trust them. I'm a real train fanatic. I have a train set in my basement. I tell people it's not a train set. People ask me if do I have a train set? I tell them it's a railroad empire. I model from Omaha, Nebraska to Portland, Oregon, with numerous cities in between. It's got 5 computers that run it. And I'm serious. It's taught me a lot of patience. It's a lot different than plumbing. I go home, Brother Hobbs, after church or when I'm all frustrated, and I work on my train set. That's a way out for me at times. That's why it keeps growing. It's all those guppies and all those angel fish. No, I'm just kidding. But there's a hill in Wyoming. It's called Sherman Hill. I preached a message on this once, the power of momentum. Momentum is a really funny thing because you can take Sherman Hill, and they designed the Union Pacific, had a steam locomotive, the largest locomotive ever built, 6,000 horsepower. Only has 200 pounds of steam pressure, Brother Buys. 200 pounds, got 4 24-inch pistons with 200 pounds of steam. Takes 32,000 gallons of water and 28 tons of coal to run it 120 miles. It could pull a train of cars 5 miles long. 5 miles long. It can gain a speed of about 65, 66 miles an hour, pulling 10,500 tons of cars. But you see, we can have all the power in the world at our fingertips, but if we're unwilling, you see, all you have to do is take one railroad spike and lay it on the rail right in front of those big 8. There's 8 of them. There are actually 16. There's 8. There's 4 sets or 8 sets of 2. You take those big, huge 62-inch drive wheels and you put a railroad spike in front of one drive wheel. And you get the engineer in there and you've got 5 miles of freight. And it doesn't matter how much power or how much steam he produces. If there's one obstacle in the way, it's not going anywhere. You remove that obstacle. You remove that just one railroad spike. And that thing will gain momentum. It'll start off slow, and as it begins to gain momentum, it begins speed and velocity. Speed and velocity are 2 totally different things. You get all that momentum going, you get all of that mass going. And that's the way our churches are. We can have everything we need. We can have all the power and the authority, all the Holy Ghost in the world. But if we have one individual, if we have one person, we have one obstacle that's in our way, all of that power just sits there and spins. Not going anywhere. And I just pray this morning as we close this out, God, if I'm that obstacle, I prayed this at Calvary, Bishop. I said, God, I don't want to be the reason why we're not experiencing a revival how you want it to be. If I'm the problem, God, either change me or move me. I'm serious about that. Change me or move me, because your will is going to be done irregardless. I'd rather cooperate and be a part of it. So tonight, or this morning, this afternoon now, in closing, am I a problem? Am I allowing what's inside of me to affect the whole entire body? We just talked about, Brother Dobbs just talked about that on woundedness. So let's close this out. I know it's been a long series here. So let's just close this out in prayer. Can we do that? And our musicians, if their praise team, just go ahead and come on up here. I'm not a singer. You'll have to sing. So as they begin to sing, let's just spend a few moments here. And let's just begin to pray and ask God. Say, God, we have a vision. And we want that vision to become reality. But we have a mission that has to be accomplished. And God, help me to be willing to accomplish that mission. Would you come this morning? Would you just come one last time? Let's just say, God, I want to be used by you. All of my faults, all my frustrations, I'm going to lay them all aside. Because your kingdom is bigger than me. It's bigger than this church. It's bigger than our community.
Lead me